Yeah. Usually people don't understand how to use it. That's a big one. And the other one is people overfill it. So they'll just, it doesn't hurt anything. It's just going to get oil in your airlines, which is pretty easy fix. But that's the main issue is people overfilling and then vacuum leak. So a vacuum leak is usually going to happen. There's some tubing back here that connects everything with vacuum lines. And every now and then they'll get a really small leak, but you can't make a vacuum with any leak. So if there's any leak at all, you won't be able to make a vacuum. And that's usually what it is. And then as far as fixing that, all you do is you put pressure in one tank, and then you crack this to in between hold and vacuum, and that pressure is going to travel into your vacuum lines, and then when you crack it like this, it's going to open that pressure into all your vacuum lines. So like you can kind of hear it filling up, and then you just spray it with soapy water, find your leak, and just reconnect it real quick. Yeah, so the only thing that's going to be different is your diesel, since we can't pressurize diesel, but this will be the same way. Put pressure, vacuum to fill it, pressure to dispense. It has a sensor in it just like the other ones. The only thing that's different, it has its own air regulator on top of the tank. That's because you don't need as much pressure to push depth compared to an oil. So it's going to be, I believe it's regulated at like 35 or 40 PSI. I mean, you can go faster if you want, but there's really not a need to. Like in cold weather, if you want more gallons per minute, you just put more pressure behind it. These tanks are rated well beyond what that compressor is going to put out, so you don't really need to worry about a tank blowing up or anything crazy like that. So it should be fine. So you're 80 psi, you're getting 5 gallons a minute. You want 8, just put 90 behind it. So the main reasons are going to be pumps and vents. With our system, so usually you're going to have a square tank and it'll have dividers in it, and that's what holds your fluid on a normal system. Those tanks can crack. They are going to have a vent on them, so as you're pumping out, it's sucking in the atmosphere into that tank, so you're contaminating your fresh oil just off pumping it off. You're getting dirt in your tank, all sorts of stuff. A pump, usually they go out when you're using them, so most of the time in a mobile application, that means the guy is 30 minutes from the nearest shop that can get him another one. So they're out in the field, the pump goes down, now you got an equipment piece down, you got that guy wasting his time replacing pumps. Another thing is pumps don't go all the way to the bottom of the tank, so as it vents in dirt and then it settles at the bottom of that tank, and that pump, it's either not going to reach down there, or it's going to be sitting right in the dirt that's built up at the bottom of the tank. And with ours, you don't have to worry about that. So we use pressure vessels, so you don't got to worry about cracking. We don't use any pumps, so it's just air pressure and vacuum. So you don't have to worry about your system not working. And then it's not vented, so you don't have to worry about any outside contaminants. Whatever. The only thing that's going to be in that tank is what you put in it. Right. Yeah. So it's going to vary. When someone first gets it, they're not going to be able to do that just because they got to kind of get used to when to take it out of the oil, stuff like that. But in theory, if you make a vacuum in any of these tanks one time, you'll fill that tank up. Because the vacuum, it doesn't go anywhere until you let air in. So as long as you're actively submerged in oil or you're feeding oil to the system, your vacuum will stay in there. Same with pressure. The pressure, though, so if you have 60 gallons in a tank, it's an 80-gallon tank, and you have 80 psi, as that fluid level goes down, it's going to disperse it. So it is going to go down in psi over time. But you can just your compressor can still be off. You have that tank up there, then you can just bump it. Yep. So in theory, someone that's been with it for a couple months, they can go. Yeah, they'll be able to do it all day. But on this unit specifically, you're going to have to run your air compressor for your diesel because that's what has your hydraulic pump. So 99% of the time, it's going to have vacuum in it. Anytime this has vacuum in it, all you do is open this valve, and it's going to actively suck it back. Yeah. Yeah, and you don't have to worry about pressure. So as a check valve, so if you have 60 psi in there and you accidentally open this, it's not going to blow out or anything like that. It's still going to, you won't have to worry about it going everywhere. Well, so not when you're building pressure. Whenever you're making a vacuum in your tank, you'll have your vacuum generator on. And when you do that, you're just going to want to crack this, just a little bit like that, probably halfway open. And that allows your compressor to stay at full speed. And that allows the air compressor to make more air. Because we rely on just sending a mass amount of air pressure through the vacuum generator to make the vacuum. So you want it running at full speed the whole time. When you're offloading, I'd recommend like 10 to 20 psi. If you go any higher than that, at the end of it's going to jump and you'll make a mess more than likely. So you can, but you cannot make it. So if you want to make pressure in this tank and vacuum on this tank, you can't do it at the same time. But once you have vacuum in this tank and you have pressure in your fresh oil tanks, you can take that, put it in oil, open it up, suck up while you're out there dispensing as well. I mean, people do it all the time. So with our system, you can suck up shop rags, nuts and bolts. I mean, nothing's going to hurt it. In the waste oil tank, if you put water in there, it's going to rust a little bit on the inside, but nothing crazy. So all the tanks drain from the bottom. So if you put the wrong type of fluid in the wrong tank or something like that, you put waste oil in the fresh tank, it's a bottom drain tank, so you can pressurize all the fluid out, wait a couple hours, pressurize it out again, wait a couple hours, pressurize it out again, and get 99% of everything out of that tank. And then what some people do is they'll just kind of top it off with 10 gallons of whatever they're changing to, run it through, and then consider that purged or cleaned. Yeah. So what you'll do is you'll just like I did, you'll put pressure in all the fresh oil tanks. You'll just run them until they're just shooting out air. Maybe wait a day and then do it again the next day. And then as far as the waste oil, you'll just all of it, take it out of there. A couple things you might check. So just make sure that like these are in the right position. So, when you go to put pressure, it actually makes pressure. When you turn it to hold, it actually holds. And then I would put all the tanks at 80 psi, even the waste and diesel and def, all that, put it at 80 psi, and then let it hold pressure overnight. Because if there is a leak on our system, it's not going to work. We rely on that closed system. So you might pressure test it overnight, but that's about it. You shouldn't have too much worry. Pressure wash this out. That should be about it.